60 Minutes with Angela starts right now.
Now, listen to this. Quote, "I am, by God's grace, the president's friend, and that is the best office anybody can enjoy. I don't want anything that will destroy that friendship." End of quote. Well, hello and welcome. This is 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajitomobi. Thank you for joining me on the program today. Now, my host today is a lawyer called to the Nigerian bar since 1981. He's also a social crusader and a former vice presidential candidate when Nigeria's current president, Muhammadu Buhari, contested the presidential elections in 2011 under the umbrella of the Congress for Progressive Change, CPC. He's the convener of the Save Nigeria group and the founder of the Lateran Assembly, a church he founded on April 1, 1989. Now, listen to this. Rumor has it that Nigeria's current president, Muhammadu Buhari, actually insisted on him still being his vice presidential candidate coming into the 2015 elections. The question is, was he really Buhari's choice for vice president again in 2015? Well, join me after the break. I'm counting down 60 minutes with Tunde Bakare, the serving overseer of the Lateran Assembly, a church in Lagos in the southwest region of Nigeria. Welcome back. Welcome, Pastor Bakare. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so in my introduction, I was talking about how a little bird whispered to me that one of the reasons President Buhari delayed in announcing his vice president was because he was insisting still on you being his running mate going into this 2015 presidential election. So, I want you now to confirm or deny if indeed you were his first choice and if he was insisting on you.
That's totally untrue because we already solved the problem of my involvement long before that time. I remember going to President Buhari while he was in Lagos months before that time, that the best way to run and not create insecurity in others is to let me stay out. That way, they will not be intimidated by my presence. Because if you recall, there are at least 3 legacy parties.
Yes.
The CPC, the ANPP, and a faction of PDP, and a faction of ABGA.
Yes.
And CPC alone cannot produce the presidential candidate and at the same time produce the vice presidential candidate. That's why I said that little bird lied.
But the days after the election was won by President Buhari would have been very interesting. And I'll tell you why. Even little me, people who knew that I had interviewed you before approached me and said, "Have you dropped your resume with Pastor Bakare?" So I imagine that in your office here, you had an office receiving resumes and CVs from people who wanted a help in to President Buhari's administration.
Well, I thought you were actually going to speak about shortly after he became the president-elect, and I went to greet him in Kaduna, and we both hugged, and it went viral, and they said, "Oh, are they going to kiss, or are they Siamese twins?" Yes, there was a barrage of help me here, help me there.
Yes.
But you know, I joked about it. And the last time I was with the president, one of the occasions I was with him, I said, you know, you are now PMB, you're no longer GMB.
Yes.
You are PMB, I'm a PO box. You are President Muhammad, but I'm your post office box. So they mail your
letters
through me.
Yes. And so in June this year, you know, he had already been sworn in. I listened to you, you said the president needed sufficient time to study what he inherited from Goodluck Jonathan's government so that they can sit down and begin to put the Nigerian house in order. This is October. Do you think that the extra time or the sufficient time he was giving has been well spent?
I would think so. My philosophy of life is we are different. We are all different. For example, at school, if you're teaching me, back then, if you're teaching me history, like Mr. Shunala Shoyinka, blessed memory, did when I was in secondary school, I would listen with rapt attention and give me an hour or two. I could reproduce verbatim,
Yes.
word for word, with where comma should be and full stop should be, the history you have just taught me. But if you're teaching me mathematics, I just didn't understand the difference between a mode, mean, and median, sigma fi, sigma xi. So we all absorb things differently.
Yes.
And knowing his nature, he probably took time to study what he was grappling with. And campaign is one thing, the reality of securing power is another. And so time will tell that he's taking his time to do it right.
Do you think he's made a seamless transition from being a military head of state to embracing the principles of democracy?
I think 12 years had sufficiently prepared him for that. If you had listened to him in times past, he said the turning point for him was when Soviet Union collapsed without a gunshot. And he saw that if communism could collapse this way, then the way forward for the nations of the earth is democracy. And since he had embraced democracy, he had been about it through 4 election cycles or electoral cycles, and on the 4th round, he became the president. So I think he had had sufficient time to become a civilian. I do not want to say to become civil, because I think he's civil, to really embrace and operate within democratic norms. But once a soldier, ever a soldier.
Always a soldier. So, you know, in terms of probes, there's been a lot of talk about how far back he should go. Do you think we should be looking at probing the past or just looking to the future?
You know, each time this issue is raised, I'm amazed that we think crime has a time bar. If a man has stolen, he's a thief, and treat him like one. However, don't let that become your major focus. Let the legal system deal with that. Because if that becomes your focus, the PVC revolution will also sweep you out. Because you end up doing nothing for those who believe in the change they thought you were bringing. I don't care how far back they go. I like what Jehu did when he became the king of Israel, or the leader in Israel, as a result of prophetic revolution. Jehu invited all the worshippers of Baal into their temple. He actually wore their garment, but he put soldiers outside and he said, let none of them escape. That would be my approach.
Okay, let's talk about the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo. You've been very critical of his times as leader, even going before his 8 years as a democratic president. You've also blamed him for the failures of President Yaradua of blessed memory, his administration, and that of Goodluck administration. So I suppose the question straight up is, what is your beef with President Obasanjo?
To whom much is given, much is required. I do not see any Nigerian in contemporary history who had been given the kind of opportunities that Obasanjo had. You can't take it away from him that maybe those who gave him the name Obasanjo, their family name, maybe is peculiar because God must be rewarding the family or this particular carrier of the name with some things. How do you explain that Brigadier Benjamin Adekunle led his 3rd Marine Commando to shake Biafra almost to its foundation, and yet was withdrawn by Gawan from the battlefront, and few weeks or months after Obasanjo got there, they handed over power. And he would think he won the war. If you examine it thoroughly, what would you say about him not being part of the coup that brought Murtala Muhammad into power? And yet, he became the greater, if not the greatest beneficiary of it. And then he handed over power to Shagari out of whether fear, whatever reason, and then became larger than life, a statesman on the global stage, being welcomed everywhere, and then climbed into jail, came out to receive power from Absalam Abubakar. A man who was a parade commander when he passed the baton to Shagari, at some 20 odd years after, and now had 8 years of born again, whatever born again is.
Whatever this definition we want to give that.
I'm not talking of Christian now. A born again, a president who had been a prisoner, those 8 years should have been dedicated to giving a solid platform for Nigeria, raising the foundation of many generations and doing things right. He did his bit, spent several millions in dollar to give us darkness, and corruption reached its peak under his watch. He was Minister of Petroleum. I wish they could now examine his ministerial stewardship while he was Minister of Petroleum. The Obasanjo that came out of prison almost broke with an overdraft from UBA in Ota, now owning massive things all across. Was it his salary that brought all this to him? Please give me a break. And then he ended up, like I say, just ensuring that accurate people or strong personalities will not succeed him and become leaders after him.
But when you say making sure that strong people wouldn't succeed him, what if I said to whom much is given, much is expected? Even if you weren't strong, by the time you find yourself
I'm not exonerating them. Yeah. I'm not exonerating those who came after him. Yaradua was on his way back to Ahmadu Bello University to resume being a lecturer. And the then governor, Goodluck Jonathan, was satisfied and was about to run election for the first time because he was deputy before he became acting, before he became governor. He wanted to run that election. And now they whisked him and brought him forth. See, we have done so much havoc to our nation that you can't say this is the process that these people had gone through that could now give us the progress we were expecting. How were they really trained? How did they come into #1 slot? It doesn't happen anywhere except in Nigeria. And when the power of incumbency insists on A is the person that will succeed me without really thinking of the implications of a lack of experience, lack of exposure, years of training, that would have happened to a person in Britain who had gone through parliamentary processes and proceedings and training to become prime minister. Anybody can become anything in Nigeria. Kasham is now senator. From the same constituency that produced the likes of Abraham Adesanya and the likes of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. It's cash and carry. And this is the atmosphere. You can deny Kashamu. And Kashamu said, when Baba was taking my money, I was good then. Yeah. So those are the kind of things you find around him. I said 3 things about him that people think he was being critical. The gap between us is so wide. You respect elders in our clan. It was classmate with one of my uncles, the oldest person in their own family, because part of my family is also who demand that I show respect. So I'm not criticizing him. I'm just in pain of what opportunities squandered. I said 3 things about him. That if by act of omission or commission Obasanjo is sworn in as president of Nigeria, 3 things will happen. 1, corruption will reach its peak. Go examine the books. 2, the revival of the occult will kill many people. See all that happen, not just the blood-letting aircraft crashing left, right, and center, people dying. Look at what the occult did at the University of Ife, that they piled like 35, 40 people on top of the other. And number 3, that family life will disintegrate in Nigeria. If I were he, I would just be looking for opportunity to restitute my ways and find a way of still contributing my quota behind the scene, having learned from the blunders of the past so that past blunders will not destroy future destinies. I have no personal grudge against him, nothing at all. I just wish he had done more for his nation other than the fanfare and the powerful serve rather than service and the awala wambe mentality. You are just one person, and a tree does not make a forest.
Has he ever responded to these criticisms of him by you?
I don't criticize him. I just tell the truth. That's my opinion. And like Moses, everybody has it. They all look different. He had not directly spoken about me. He had invited me at the time to commission his new chapel. I received a letter from him. He had consulted with Pastor Yorisheje for they would like me to come and commission the chapel. And I said, oh, Pastor, doing a chapel, me to commission. There will be an eclipse when sun meets the moon. Let every man stay in his own quarters.
All right, let's go to the National Assembly now. You do know that on Tuesday, October 13th, we'll find ministers or would-be ministers screened. What do you hope to see? What do you wish to happen in the Senate on that day?
All I hope is for the Senate to do its own job, what you can call best practices, to ensure that the best, the most competent and the fittest are the ones that will help President Buhari to steer the affairs of the nation. I expect them to do their best to ensure the oversight responsibilities is not just swept under carpet. Their promise is not going to be business as usual. Nigeria deserves the best. Only the best is good enough for this country. So I expect them to do their best.
Were you disappointed at the list? And I'm asking that because it wasn't just the disappointment that Mr. President brought out names that people already knew. I think the disappointment really arose from the fact that leading up to the election, these were men known to Mr. President. He had interacted with them, Governor Fahimi, Governor Fashola, Governor Amechi. He traveled with them widely. He was on the campaign trail with them. Since he's become president, they've been around him. So I think people were looking for fresh names, new names out of the box. And they're a bit disappointed that it's still the same people.
Where is that done anywhere in the world? That you just wake up and go and pick people you don't know. Think out of the box.
Yes.
That's not politics of reality. And maybe those who are disappointed should wait till the remaining 15 names should surface. Maybe he has surprises for them.
Do you agree with the Senate that they should all declare their assets before the screening? There's a bit of a problem with the law there. The law says when you've been appointed, then you declare your assets. So is it like putting the cart before the horse?
I don't think I really want to dwell with that. I'll just mention what I call a cautionary word.
Yes.
Let those who live in glass house not throw stones. Perhaps it will be inappropriate for me to be a veteran chain smoker and to be telling my son that cigarette smoking is dangerous. If the Senate is itself embroiled in declaration controversies,
Yes.
they should be careful not to cut a pound of flesh. And if they do cut it, they should remember that not a drop of blood must come out.
Join us again after the break.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
Angela, that's a great question.
Great question, Angela. Angela, that is a very great question. That's a great question. Okay, that's a great question.
Yeah, very good question.
That's a good question.
This is an interesting question you put.
60 Minutes with Angela. Again, answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, it's 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajetomobi. On my hot seat today, Tunde Bakare, the serving overseer of the Lateran Assembly here in Lagos. Staying with the National Assembly now, there's a requirement that within the Senate rules that each nominee must be supported by 2 senators from his state. How feasible do you think that is? You know, I thought once elections have been won, the role of the party diminishes and everyone is serving Nigeria, not really serving the parties.
You can have true democracy without party politics because the candidates who are now either ministers or governors or the president himself are byproducts of a party.
Yes.
And you don't want to graduate from school and burn the school down. I think party supremacy, in the days of Action Group, in the days of UPN, you have disciplined, organized party that actually could tell a person that, look, you are supposed to be a minister there, you are no longer to be there, and they will respect that. But now, since it's a matter of cash and carry,
Yeah.
there'll be no party discipline. So I don't see how you turn back to the womb that produced you and try to say, well, this is time to serve Nigeria. It's all part of service. Let things be done decently and in order. Now, as for getting support of 2 senators, if the rule requires that, then the rule should be followed. And anybody who cannot get support of that should drop from the list and they look for somebody who could do it. As simple as ABC.
Yes.
Nigeria is a population of 170 million. I don't think the people that have been chosen now are the best and the rest of us are ruffians, but it's their turn. And when it's somebody else's turn, you'll be called upon also. It's your turn by virtue of being in the same party. It's your turn by virtue of exposure, haven't been given opportunity to serve. There may be others. To every Elijah in the Bible, there are 7,000 others. So if someone is not having required support and is unable to fulfill the requirement of the law, look for another person to replace such a person.
You don't think it will be seen as eyeballing the president? If these are the president's first 21 and for some reason they're not approved, wouldn't it be seen as eyeballing him?
Won't we need to use our eyeballs to do oversight? How do you see? How do you do oversight when you cannot see? I don't think it's eyeballing. I think it's doing your own part of it to ensure that only the best and the fittest are put in place of serving the nation.
Yes.
That does not mean they should then do party politics with it, witch hunting, and saying, okay, you threw down my voodoo, I'll break your egg. Your hand threw down my voodoo, that kind of thing.
Yes. An
eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth to make the nation full of blind people.
You're happy with the list? I mean, you think that so far these are the ones that the president has chosen? We should respect his choices?
If you don't, what can you do? What do you want to do? He's sitting on the number 1 seat and he's taking time to call these people. If we find faults with them, not mere allegations,
yes,
not just trying to call a dog a bad name in order to hang it. They'll find that they're not good because they have committed a certain crime. I'm sure President Buhari will be the first to say, excuse me, go do something else or
yes,
go find something else to
yes,
do. But outside of that, Mr. President has chosen who he thinks he will work with. Jesus chose his own 12 disciples who became apostles, and one of them was a thief. And so if Jesus chose Judas, President Buhari could have chosen 2 or 3 more Judases.
Yeah.
Because as we believe that Jesus, Son of God, mighty God himself, included Judas in his cabinet.
yes.
Please, this is not the kingdom of heaven where you have angels in the throne room serving God. This is a society of men. And the best of men are still men at the very best.
Well, the PDP says that they don't think the president will put much value on his ministers. After all, he's called potential ministers noisemakers, and he thinks that the permanent secretaries do all the work. So, do you agree with that statement, that not much value comes?
There was nothing in his statement that called those who are coming in as noisemakers. He said ministers are noisemakers. Who told you he was not speaking about ministers in the past? He's been a head of state before. He could have seen what they've done. So, except I asked him directly if he is calling these particular ones noisemakers, because if I be called a noisemaker before I take a job, dignity will not let me take it.
Now, at Wema Bank's 70th anniversary commemorative lecture in April, you advised the president to appoint technocrats into strategic positions and shun it's our turn politics. Do you think he has adhered to that advice? And I'm asking that because his initial appointments were seen to be lopsided in favor of the northern region.
I stand by those words. Those who say he had chosen more people from the north than he had chosen from the south should wait till he assembles everything. You start choosing from a particular place based on your interaction, relationship, the best way you know how to do what you're doing.
Yes.
There are laws that cannot be violated in terms of either federal character or things that border the unity of our nation. Now, what they give A or B or C should not be an issue as much as this is a government that is inclusive as against being exclusive of other stakeholders. And don't forget that North, when I say North, I mean core North, I've been out of power for more than 12 years. 8 years of Obasanjo. And then Yaradua came in briefly, and sickness and disease did not allow him to survive. May his soul rest in peace. Jonathan came in again. I was going to go for a second term. So this time, they will need a bit of consolidation too. But what I was saying in that commemorative lecture is, let us put Nigeria first and not allow ethnicity and religion to color our minds when we are making these choices. And I think he's doing his best to assemble the best and the brightest. It might look lopsided now, but I will not be able to make that final call or to judge that situation until all the seeds are in the jigsaw puzzle plate.
You think it's time for us to also know the portfolios that the nominees will be getting as they go into the Senate for screening? We're still not seeing that aspect.
You know, because the cabinet is each, he knows the strength and perhaps the weaknesses of those he are choosing. All kind of guessworks are out there.
Yes.
This one is going to external affairs, that one is going to infrastructure, this one may go to this and that,
Yes.
this one is going to be Minister of Information. Put all of it together. You may be right, you may be wrong. Let him make the call.
You've canvassed for conditional immunity. You say that you don't mind immunity, but you don't want it to cover crime. The danger with that is that can't someone's opponents skew something, you know, in such a way that a little crime is included, and that can also be a distraction.
If they skew something, the law is there to show whether it's skewed up or not skewed up. Those, you know, we tolerate criminals in our crime. Those who should not even be at all around the national till or state till, they are robbing the country blind, day and night. And they go abroad with their profligacy thinking that they will get away with it. It's a shame that in this country the same charges were levied against Ibori and he was discharged and acquitted, only for him to be convicted elsewhere.
Yes.
Immunity breeds impunity. If I know that there are consequences for my action, I'll think twice before I do it. Except when, like I said in another interview, your father's name is not of any value and you don't have any personal dignity and self-respect.
Yes.
Because if you do, you will know that the public till is not for you to amass personal empire. The resources are there for the benefit of the larger society. Something is lost on the governed and the people in government in this nation. What is lost is the purpose of government. What is the purpose of government? The welfare and the security of the citizens of a country. And if people now want to use immunity to steal, to rob, to kill.
Do you support the call for immunity for the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives?
Silence is golden. If the Constitution has not provided for it, there's no point asking for it now. Or we should also ask for immunity for church pastors and for clerics and imams so that their congregation cannot touch them. After all, touch not my anointed, do my prophets no harm. If anybody commits crime, grind his nose to the ground and let him pay for it. For when judgment is not speedily executed, the hearts of men are setting them to do evil.
I want your reaction also to the matter of the Fulani herdsmen that's currently raging now, with some people calling for them to be banned in the southwest, and the chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Chidi Odinkalu, saying that those who call for that are making what he calls hate speech. He says making it the basis of a campaign against a race is hate speech. Do you support them to be banned from the southwest?
You're asking for my reaction, and naturally I don't react. I act because all I've seen in my Bible is the acts of the apostles and not reaction of the apostles. But I will not shy away from your question. What happened a few days and weeks ago to Chief Falaye is a slap on the entire nation.
Not on the Yoruba race.
It's a slap on the entire nation that our elders are no longer respected, and that citizens who have poured their lives out in this country don't even have any place of celebrating them, and because of the value they've added, to let them also retire gracefully and peacefully. That shows again the weaknesses in our security system, because a man at 77 being abducted and taken to work for hours, like 2 days or so, he could have dropped dead at any time and would have had bigger crises in our hands. However, a system that does not provide for the poor cannot protect the rich, no matter how highly placed. How many people have been devastated by these same herdsmen? Women violated, according to the report I read.
Yes.
Farms ravished, destroyed completely. But because the owners have no name like Falae, everybody kept quiet. Sometimes things like this will bring issue to the front burner.
Yes.
And that's a perspective I want to look at it. It has brought into the front burner, and we must all look at it critically. Now, if you ban a Fulani man from coming to the South, regardless of his profession, because you're saying Fulani herdsmen,
yes.
And, if you ban him from coming to the South, you're already saying there's segregation, and this is not one nation anymore. It's just, you now said, look, let us create ranches for these people and limit them to where they can practice their trade.
Yes.
For example, in civilized communities, they have places where you can call computer village.
Yes.
You have places where you say trailers should park here, and they respect that. So we should create that. And I don't see why someone should start, what do they do with their cattle? They follow their cattle from Karanamoda
yes.
to Ondo village. To do what? Are they going to walk all the way? Raise your cattle in a particular location, put them in vehicles to where you want to sell them, or stay within your own boundary. But I won't say place restriction. The Nigeria of my dream is where everyone can say state of residence and not state of origin. And will not be is Imbati, is Okoro, is Mola. All those things should die with the prejudices of the past. That does not mean crime had not been committed. A violation of private property had taken place, and everyone involved must be brought to book. And if they don't do it, now it's happening to green trees. It will also happen to dry trees. And I pray that a vengeful spirit will not come upon some people to start committing atrocities and killing people. It has not paid any nation. It didn't pay us in 1966. It will not pay us in 2015.
Join us again after the break. So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview. I like to think it's a conversation between two people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who become the news. And the whole idea is to inform, to educate, or to clarify, as the case may be. It is an art getting people to answer the questions that everyone is thinking in their minds. And that's what we try to do on 60 Minutes with Angela. I ask all the questions that everyone's thinking about and no one wants to voice. All the questions you always wanted to ask. You get those answers on 60 Minutes with Angela. Every week on this station, 60 Minutes with Angela, getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask. Welcome back. My concluding moments now with Pastor Tunde Bakare. Now, you always commended the governor of Kaduna State, Nasiru El-Rufai. You said he was a blessing to the state and a man with the potential of transforming that state. So far, what do you think of him as governor?
I'm biased. I'm biased because we work together at close range, and I know his tremendous capacity. His knack for hard work. What he did with the Federal Capital Territory is still there as a standard that others are yet to match since he left the Federal Capital as a minister on the Capital Territory. I think another opportunity has come for him to put the signature of visionary leadership on Kaduna State for good. And I pray that in spite of the challenges and the obstacles that he will face in turning an ancient city into a modern city, that God will grant him grace and humility and the character to carry others along, and the willingness to know though Rome was not built in a day, can be destroyed in a day, to do it systematically in such a way that there will be a lot of buy-ins and it can then bring his dream into reality.
Yes.
I'm praying for him. He's one of those, you can say I'm in the Amen Corner. Amen Corner seems to be popular with me now. Someone joked that I'm father of God. It was his own son, actually.
Yes.
His own son said, "Is Pastor Bakare your daddy?" Because I bought him a phone. Mustafa, his son, said, "Is Pastor Bakare your dad? He bought you a phone." He said, "Yes, he's your grandfather." Our families are close. When my house got burned, it was the only Nigeria I could recall who traveled all the way from the north and brought me clothes and fabrics, thinking that our family might need it at that time.
Yeah.
And I've taken the bag and brought into my museum in Abeokuta to remind me of those who stood with me at that time. Brilliant child, read law, read mathematics, read quantity surveying, and seems restless to do things.
Yeah.
And whatever he does in Kaduna, I believe is a seed towards his future. That's why I want him to do it right.
Yes.
Not necessarily with ambition, but with vision.
What future do you see? You see him in the presidency, perhaps?
I say see towards the future. That future has many coloration. You don't know tomorrow, I don't know tomorrow. Only God knows that. But God who has begun a good work in him,
Yes.
I pray will take him to whatever height he wants to take him to so that he can fulfill his own destiny.
And I'm very keen to know who you think of all the Yoruba leaders that are alive today could be said to be the authentic leader of the Yorubas.
Very difficult question, but not difficult to answer. If you look at the history and the trajectory of Yorubas, leadership, in the sense that you're saying it, always emerge in the midst of crisis. Just before and during the Civil War, the military era,
Yes.
Chief Obafemi Awolowo, with his pace-setting and trailblazing grace, was accorded that position. And when he took that position in Mapo Hall, he said, "I will be your leader until partisan politics will begin." Because when partisan politics begin, Yorubas don't have one leader. It will be difficult to get one clear leader right now. You will see that the likes of Pajasi emerged during Nadeko. That was a moment of challenge. And shortly thereafter emerged Pa Abraham Adesoya. And after that, there's been no clear leader. Great leaders in Yoruba land lead from behind. They lead from behind.
Yes.
They influence things, they use the power of influence. Perhaps if you give me 2, 3, 4 names, I can say maybe one of them. But I don't know anyone who you can say this is the leader of the entire Yoruba right now.
Yes.
There are well-respected leaders who we call, for example, if you're talking of monarchs, there are monarchs that command respect. There are others that do not necessarily command such respect.
Yes.
And if you're talking of commerce, not monarchs, now commerce,
Yes.
and there are leaders in Yoruba land that have contributed their quota in the area of commerce, and because they're barons of industry and they're creating jobs for people,
Yes.
and families are benefiting from them. And if we look at professional people also, there are clear leaders who have made their mark in different professions. So you have a collegiate
Yes.
of leaders, but to have one that will stand shoulder high above others right now is a tall order.
You've acknowledged, though, that the national leader of the APC, Bola Tinubu, you've acknowledged his labor. You said he has unique contributions in bringing the race together. And I was thinking...
The race?
Yes.
I didn't say that. I say he has done his best in pushing PDP out of the Southwest. I don't use the word race carelessly. And I'm not saying...
Race. That his unique contributions in bringing the Yoruba race together.
There's no Yoruba race. I don't believe such thrash. There's only one human race. God made all humanity from one blood. There's only one human race. Now there are different ethnic nationalities. At very best, the Yoruba is ethnic nationality, not a race. Because the moment you jump into racial things, you divide the world. A German can give blood to a Jew can give blood to an African, and they will still survive because he made the whole of the human race from one blood. But talking of Yoruba people,
yes.
That's your personal opinion, not mine, that Bola Tinubu had brought Yoruba together. You know,
What about his role in
any
in the
leader,
APC?
any leader that is going that is not followed by the collective, he's only taking his stroll. And I don't want to fool myself. He has done his best to the best of his ability. He's one man whose doggedness in fighting PDP, you know, very impressive.
Yes.
Because he stood with one state, and thank God it wasn't a poor state, so he was able to fight and push when the local government allocation was not made. There are so many good things he had done as a person. And people think there must be some war between Asiwaju Bola and Ahmed Tinubu and myself. There's nothing like that, except in the figment of people's imagination. And if you think so, it'll be very, very disappointing. Look, my 60th birthday, he was here. My daughter got married. He was invited. He came. He gave gifts towards that. Why would I just wake up and attack him? There are issues that they thought. Someone said, oh, he has done what Awo could not do. And I said, hey, don't go that way. Because when God needed an Awo, he raised an Awo. Somebody could rise tomorrow who might be greater than Awo. But I've not seen that among Yoruba people. There's not been such a person.
Yet.
You can't put Awolowo and Obasanjo on the same pedestal. We don't even need to do that. You're talking of greatness that is byproduct of selflessness and foresight that is unmatched yet. It remains relevant and a reference point even in Nigerian politics of today. All the clamor that we are talking about restructuring Nigeria now were byproduct of his thought and his hard work, that a nation like Nigeria will only survive by embracing true federalism.
And now that you talked about restructuring, it reminds me of when you asked for the 2015 elections to be postponed. I've also read the manifesto of the Save Nigeria group. The question of postponement you have clarified was because you thought certain things needed to happen before we get to the point of the election. You gave many examples about countries where those things didn't happen and the results. Well, now we are here. The restructuring hasn't happened in the way that you said. Are you hopeful that perhaps President Buhari has taken a little bit of that on board and we will see that happen?
Let's wait and see. I'm glad for the way you wrap all this up. Some, I don't know his name well now, wrote a few days ago and said, Pastor Bakare is playing God, saying nobody can ever be like Awo. I never said such things. I prayed our nation will have greater than Awo. Jesus himself said, greater than works than I do, his disciples will do.
Yes.
Every father wants his children to be greater than him. But we are saying up till now, eagles don't flock. You only see one at a time. And thank God for Awo and for his legacy. I don't think others who are led were thinking of legacy. They were thinking of their private empires. And that's why most of the time public till is their playground and they acquire things for themselves. I hate that with passion, no matter who succeeds God. But let me come to this restructuring business. Nigeria is sitting on a time bomb. There will be no progress. In fact, there will be retrogression if there's no restructuring. The methodology might be different. Someone might think, okay, let's go to the National Assembly instead of spending a lot of money to redo our laws. That could be an approach. If they now less interested in their remuneration, in their dress allowance, in their accommodation allowance and furniture allowance, and they're interested in the emergence of a great nation, it can be accomplished anyhow. But not to restructure this lopsided arrangement, what I call the paramountcy of the federal government over the states. I see the states as parastatals of the federal government. That's why they go cap in hand every month to look for allocation, and they can't do anything on their own.
And that's not what federalism demands.
That's not. True federalism or close to true federalism was what we had in the First Republic. Look, there was healthy competition amongst the regions. Obafemi Awolowo University was not built with federal government. It was a byproduct of cocoa. Boom. Ahmadu Bello University came from Granite Pyramids of the North. University of Nigeria and Nsukka came from the process of Eastern region. There was healthy competition. We're going at a pace that Nigeria was beating nations like France. Western region had television before France. We're going at such a pace. Free education, the man dedicated close to 57% of his annual budget to education. People like us have hope, and people like us were raised. I would have died in carpenter's shed, but for his foresight. But right now, we don't even allocate as much as 16% to education at federal level, except that begins to change. And we can take money allocated for education and health, we can use it to build 6-lane road in Abuja, destroying the future of the nation, because the greatest asset of a nation is the human capital. That is the difference between that generation of politicians in the First Republic and the looters, those who came after them in what we call the years of the locust. I don't want to boil over. Truth be told, if we don't restructure our nation, and we have 4 states like Rivers State, Lagos State, Akwa Ibom, and Bayelsa thriving, and the others can't even pay salaries, and they need bailout. Why, in the widest imagination of any reasonable person, would you have 19 states from the north that used to have one commissioner for education, a minister for education? The entirety of the north had one commissioner for education, and they were able to do more. And now you have 19 commissioners of education in the north alone. 36 commissioners for education, and education is not making any progress. Look, we have started talking about geopolitical zone for a while, and it's already becoming an acceptable lingo amongst us. So let's have 6, whatever you want to call them, zones or regions, and let's restructure this country before over-bloated government will kill us. Spending 70 to 75% of your revenue on recurrent expenditure is nothing but madness.
It sounds very good when you say it, but who will drive it? The people who are there now are benefiting from the system as it is. If you say 6 regions, then a lot of governors are going to be out of work. A lot of people are going to be out of work. How will they change it?
It reminds me of what I said when someone said the Obas are playing, they should be given constitutional role. I respect some monarchs. With great respect, they're doing their best. They are ministers of justices of peace in their neighborhood. But can I be honest with you? Is Nigeria a republic or a kingdom? So if we're a republic, why do we need? See, it means the office of a governor is a job.
Isn't it?
Oh, if it's a job, then you go there for remuneration and how to survive. It's there for a means of livelihood, not service. We are not even asking. We had sat at the national conference in 2014. We had sat and figured out how these things will do. We are not asking you not to be governor, but stay within a zone, and one person will represent that zone at the center. You will not have over-bloated thing. Because you're governor today, you can be mayor tomorrow. It's because you still have the states to preside over. Look at Soviet Union. A constitution that will not bend will break. If you think it's going to work, when there's nothing to bail anybody out, this structure, presently constituted, cannot give Nigeria any predictable progress. No way. Anybody who has enough scientific common sense knows it cannot work. Look at power concentrated at the center. Now, the Nigerian police force is centrally a central organ of federal government.
Yes.
Look, if there was state police, and the police, regardless of what you want to say, it's not likely that they will not be able to curtail Fulani herdsmen immediately. That the president had to call the Inspector General of Police to go look for Falai. Listen, why then do you use the same methodology to get the Chibok girls? Or Chibok girls are nobody.
Do you think that this administration will pay attention to the resolutions of the national conference?
Let's wait and see. It's been handed over to them, government to government, and it's also being handed over to the National Assembly. President Buhari said, no, I will not touch it. He didn't say that. He spoke against the national conference in the sense of teachers not being paid. Why waste 7 billion on this? Well, they didn't say we don't need to sit down at the table of brotherhood and renegotiate our togetherness.
Yes.
Because I'm not happy with this, a question of time, I'm going to kick.
Well, finally, is there any appointment in the horizon for you? I was reading one of the dailies, and they're saying that you're a sort of minister for special duties or something like that.
May God forgive all those who are saying that. When they look for the uncle of the person to be a special minister of Minister of Special Duties means you are useless, and whenever there's something else to give to you, not my life, forget it. Perish the thought. Minister of Special Duties. What is special about the duty? Any appointment to the horizon, I'm already appointed, called, appointed, anointed to contribute my quota. I'm such a person who believes that you can lead without a title, and you can function without necessarily looking for one office somewhere.
I think it was when they saw you on the president's entourage to America in July, people thought at the meeting with Madeleine Albright, the former Secretary of State, I think it was there when you said a few words, people thought, you know, there's a role there being prepared for you.
I cannot preempt that, but honestly, I've never asked for anything behind the scene or in the open. Look, I'm, by God's grace, President's friend. And that's the best office anybody can enjoy. I don't want anything that will destroy that friendship. So I can wish him well, I can pray along with him, and I can contribute my quota. I can be his guy on the ground with grassroots people who say, hey, don't let them deceive you, Oga. This is what is happening downtown. That's better for me. Besides, General Gowon presided over this nation at the age of 30. I'm 61 this month. Or next month.
Next month.
At 61, let me give it to my younger brothers.
Thank you very much,
You're most welcome
for having us in your home.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's it for this week. I'm Angela Ajetumobi. Thank you for watching.